Thank you. Thank you, Rob, and thanks to Phi Beta Kappa and the Academy for convening this discussion, giving me a chance to share some recent research that I've done, but also to attend some of the sessions. The one this morning was quite stimulating, and I go to a lot of academic meetings and often find that those really just don't approach the pressing issues. And here, from what I've seen, we're getting to the pressing issues. Now, I haven't prepared a speech. This is really a policy discussion, and we've got an hour and a half to discuss one particular policy that I've sort of been hovering around for many years now and focusing intently on in the last year and a half, and it has to do with this system of research in the humanities. What is the research productivity system about? What are the incentives for it? What are the consequences of it? And it's actually a quite delicate, sensitive one, especially when we get down to faculty ego and faculty identity, which gets highly invested in the research project over time. But here, I don't want to get into another publish or perish complaint. We've heard that forever, and the system just keeps going. The system, in fact, keeps expanding. Simply saying we need to not publish so much, we need to focus more on teaching, that hasn't gotten much anywhere in terms of what I see as normal faculty activity at research institutions and more at liberal arts colleges as well. Well, what I want to try and do is get to some levers, okay, and some data to examine the research productivity system, how it is operating in three of its components, and why that examination licenses some changes, right? Some deep policy adjustments. And you're the perfect audience for this. You are the target group for this, so I'm doubly happy to share that. Now, the research project. When I came out of graduate school, I went through in the 1980s. I came out of UCLA in 88. And English and Comp Lit and French, boy, were they riding high in those years. This was the cutting edge. And it was drifting out past English, the language departments, into the social sciences, even into ed schools. And the students were piling in to those fields. And one could talk about the latest in deconstruction, in feminist theory and post-colonialism and other schools of thought arriving around those years, as this is the cutting edge. This is the most advanced thinking taking place in the university right now. And so there was a great heady and weighty feel to coming out at that time, and you felt, what is the highest, most sophisticated, most advanced, most consequential, and most beneficial activity for a humanities PhD, okay, in literary studies. And that was to write books and articles. Right? This is the way in which you advance the discipline. This is the way you represent what is going on. This is the way you help the project. More than teaching, right? More than service, more than off-campus kinds of public activities, going into high schools, say. No, it was, that special artifact, right? The book, or the article in critical inquiry, or new literary history, and we all absorbed that. Okay, we all felt, I want to be like Stanley Fish, right? I want to be like. Stanley's a good guy. I interviewed him last, did a profile of him, and he's actually quite unpretentious in his own way. He's argumentative and disputatious, but he's actually easy to get along. I found easy to get along. Maybe he's getting old now. I didn't know him back in the Big Duke days. But that was, I mean, it was the invention of the humanities celebrity, right? The celebrity thinker, and we all emulated that. And research was the way to go, right? It wasn't by sitting in your office and you know, going over rough drafts with your freshman comp students. I mean, we all had to do that at UCLA. I taught about 21 courses through graduate school. But no. It was the graduate seminar where I would present my ideas. That was as far as your teaching, really, as a researcher, descended. So you absorbed the research identity. And, of course, it was reflected in university policy at research institutions. Right? You got hired. You know, it helped if you had a couple publications on your CV to get on that short list. And then, of course, as an assistant professor, what do? You turn the dissertation into a book. How's the book coming? How's the manuscript coming? Who are you going to submit it to? All right, from the day you arrived on campus. And over time, you better get that in shape and have another project well underway, right? I mean, at UCLA, they actually formulated it as 6 articles, a book in press, or published or in press, and a second book project clearly, you know, becoming clarified. And according to the MLA, that publication demand in the last 30 years has gone up significantly. Okay? I mean, even when I got out in the 80s, 1 book in press at Emory was going to do it. You know, now schools want 1 book, another manuscript completed. I mean, the bar keeps getting higher and higher. As a result, over the last 50 years, you get more and more publications all the time. And if you look at the simple output, okay, in 1959, according to the MLA bibliography, all the items of publication, the dissertations, the essays, the reviews, the books, the editions, everything in all language and literature fields, French, Russian, linguistics, English, freshman comp, was a little under 14,000 total. Now it's 70,000 every year, 70,000. From 1981 to 2006, Shakespeare received more than 21,000 items of scholarship. Shakespeare alone. That didn't stop another 700 being published the following year. Okay? It is an astounding avalanche of paper, of printed pages, all the time. And the simple expansion of the professorate does not account for the expansion of publication. No, people are having to publish more and more to get to the next step all the time. And more departments are counting research as more important than teaching. In fact, the percentage of those departments who do count research more than teaching has doubled in about the last 35 years, according to the MLA. There are now more than 700 departments of language and literature that are identifying themselves as research departments. Now, which shows that the research mandate is not, it is not just an elite thing. It's not just, you know, tier 1. It's not just the Ivy League. This is expanding far outward, and I dare say that you all experience this pressure coming down on your schools, yourselves all the time. So, what does this mean? It means that we now have an army. I would say if you've got 700 departments for language and literature, when you add up the regular faculty, the adjuncts who want to be regular faculty, the lecturers who maybe have some stability but also would like to become tenure track, when you add up all the graduate students who are out there on the job market, finishing up their dissertations, all those who've gone on the job market and are still trying every year to get in, you've got to have over 50,000 people who are highly trained, extremely intelligent, motivated, hardworking, ambitious people who labor on research as a primary activity. Okay? This is a huge cohort of talent and intelligence and investment on part of the university, part of colleges who trained them, who produced these individuals, and are continuing to support those who are in the profession. And so this is, again, a system at work, and as I've seen over the years, something's been happening with this system. It is quite different now to publish a book on Herman Melville today than it was in 1973, for instance. When one sees that, to take the example of Emily Dickinson, from 1935 to 1965, the entire output of scholarship on Emily Dickinson numbered 233. Less than 10 per year. Which means, of course, everyone interested in Emily Dickinson could read everything published on Emily Dickinson, easily over time. And you could bring it into your classrooms. From 1981 to 2011, Emily Dickinson received 2,007 items of scholarship. So it went up more than 900% in terms of the output. So we've got 70, 80 items of scholarship, dissertations, books, chapters, articles published on Emily Dickinson every year. And you have to ask, okay, my book on Emily Dickinson, my essay on Emily Dickinson, first of all, joins 80 other items published that year, and it comes on the tail of 2,500 items already published on Emily Dickinson. Okay. And we'll come back to this, as I think, in the discussion, to ask about the nature of scholarship applied to materials that largely don't change. Emily Dickinson's corpus has been pretty much the same since 1955, okay? Since 1955. Certainly there are new theories of literature. There is the occasional discovery about a new biographical fact. There may be a discovery of a poem by Emily Dickinson that was published during her lifetime. There are only about 20 that were published that surfaces somehow. There's material for, but those are rather rare. That's one way in which the humanities differ from the sciences. Well, many areas of the humanities differ from the sciences. Science is progressive. The humanities are progressive, but in a different way than the sciences are progressive. But we'll come back to that. But if you think about the system today, under this avalanche of publication, and in the last 30 or 40 years of a continual avalanche of publication, I think it's time to pose a question. Are the products of literary research worth it? Now, if you go into an English department and pose that question, right, all the guns will come out, right? They will, what are you talking? Of course they're worth it, okay? Research, all right? This is where we have the investment in the identity. Research is the most important thing we do. Of course, we got teaching students, yeah, but research, has that special cachet. Well, this is the question, and I think the question is forced upon us at this point. Are they worth the labor? And these are very labor-intensive items. To write a book is years of work. I won't go into it. To do the article, hundreds of hours. The whole process of getting it conceived, researched, written, rewritten, re-researched, submitted, edited, responding back and forth with the press, page proofs and so on. These are very labor-intensive. And they cost money. Okay? Faculty are paid to do this. So we have a big investment of money, labor, and talent, and intelligence, and brilliance on the part of the faculty. Is the product worth it? That's the question. And here's how I've tried to get to the question. I've got a research report on this, and I would have brought it today to distribute, but It's being released on Friday. We're doing an event at the Cato Institute in D.C. And anyone who wants me to send you the report, it's short, it's very readable, reader-friendly, give me your card and I'll email it to you on Wednesday or Thursday. But here's what I did. I said, okay, how are we going to calculate the costs and the benefits of literary research? How do you do that? And I thought, okay, let's do a 3-part study and let's select 4 English departments. I got data on English departments at University of Vermont, University of Georgia, University of Illinois, and SUNY Buffalo. These 3 of those English departments are ranked in the 30s, 40s, or 50s in U.S. News' research rankings. University of Vermont isn't ranked because it doesn't have a PhD program. Okay? But at all 4 of these universities, if you look at the faculty handbook, there is the demand. You must do research. You will be judged at tenure time on research, teaching, and service. And research is always number 1. Right? They don't like to, universities don't like to lay out exact, some do, but most of them don't like to lay out fractions. 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. Okay? And we all know that when you get down to it, research is always the first. In the tenure meeting, we'll discuss this. You know, that's the critical side. So, I looked at those 4 departments, and I calculated 1, investment. Then I calculated 2, production. Okay. How much does the university invest in research by the English professors? How much do the English professors produce as a consequence of that investment? And then 3, consumption. What happens to that research when it gets published? Okay, that's going to be the tricky part. So let's get to it. Let's get to it. And you know, I'm open to any questions right now. Anytime anyone wants to bring this up, I want this to be a conversation because many of this you know a lot better than I do. Right? I'm not coming at it from administration. I'm coming at it from one of the researchers. Okay. So I got salary data on those 4 public institutions, which you can get online. And all 4 of them pay their faculty roughly about $27,000, $28,000 a year to do research. How do I get that number? Well, I just did the conservative estimate. At research universities, you are hired to do 3 things: research, teaching, and service. You're supposed to fulfill obligations in each area. And a research university pays its people to produce. And if you don't produce, you are fired. Right? Tenure time, you're gone. So I simply said we will call 1/3 of compensation. I didn't even include benefits and health care and pension. 1/3 of annual salary I'm going to call research salary. Okay? And that amounts to, on average, in the departments, $27,000, $28,000. They're all pretty close in there. And when you add up the total numbers for a department, and I didn't look at individuals. I don't want to single out people. I don't want to single out works. I'm looking at the department level, budget for the whole department. And it comes out, SUNY Buffalo is about $1.15 million a year. Georgia is about $950,000 a year. They're all roughly in that area. That's the investment that the university makes in research. And it's a sizable investment, and what you're doing is you're asking faculty members to devote at least 1/3 of their time to fulfilling that obligation. So in a 40-hour work week, you're telling faculty members you'd have to spend 700 hours a year doing research. Okay. This is your labor here. And you have to understand, I am taking highly trained people. They're great teachers. I want them to do this much teaching. And they're smart, intelligent research. You do this much research. So this is a university policy in which you have your employees, work on this. Okay. How do faculty respond? What I saw, I got all the CVs from these universities, looked on the web, did bibliographic searches, and so on. And what I found was that the idea of the tenured faculty member, we all know the assistant professors work like crazy because they're under the gun, right? They're on a publication schedule that goes by pretty quickly. Tenured professors, very few of them just sit back and let it go. Most of them continue the publication schedule. They continue working hard. Remember those old stories of the tenured professor mowing his lawn on Thursday afternoon, you know, and so on. That really doesn't hold up. They are industrious and they produce a lot. They continue to publish even after they have that paycheck for life. Okay, the golden, you know, the golden anointment, you know, anointing of tenure doesn't say, I've made it, I can relax, I can slow down. No, they continue to publish. Perhaps because a lot of salary, annual salary increases on your annual report, how many publications, that determines your salary adjustment. And of course, promotion to full professor as well. Not to mention, you're thinking about getting a job somewhere else. You know, there are a lot of incentives that continue after tenure. And remember, 6-7 years of graduate school, the job market for 1 or 2 years, 6 years as an assistant professor, you've absorbed the research orientation, right? It's your identity. It's what you do. It authenticates your activity, you know, your daily life. The only option is just to get real cynical, okay? And there are a lot of cynical people out there in our profession, but many of them remain earnest researchers and they believe in the value of what they do. So that's the productivity side, and I do lay out how many books were published between 2004 and 2009, how many articles were published between 2004 and 2009 in each department, and they certify themselves as places of research. Research activity is going on here. My department is doing things here. I've got this many publications that came out of the English department this year. Here's my annual report for the department that will say this, and it will show we are providing a more than adequate return on your investment. You give us money, we do research, our research gets published, and what does that do? That enhances the prestige of your institution. This is what the research university needs, publications, to be a research university in the humanities. So the faculty hold up their end of the bargain quite well. They are paid, and they hold up their end of the bargain quite well. Now, one side note on pay. A lot of humanities professors complain, look at how the sciences are supported, and we get nothing. If you say, well, I've said to a lot of English professors, well, remember, you get paid every year to do research. That's kind of a surprise to a lot of them, that part of their ordinary paycheck is to support their research, to support them going to the library, to give them a reduced teaching load, right? That's why, you know, I have a 2-2 teaching load. I get down on the ground on my desk, you know, in my office and kiss the ground all the time. A 2-2 teaching load at Emory, you know, I've got courses with 16 students in them. I teach a graduate course if I want to. I usually don't teach a graduate course. I teach a lot of freshman courses by choice at Emory, but I could do that graduate course, which means 1 day a week for 3 hours, and I've got 4 students who want to be just like me. You know, life is easy. Life is good. I don't know, you know, who wants to teach those 16 freshmen when they walk in, sit, you know, in my office hours, and I'm going over something with them, and they look at me and say, you know, I don't even like to read novels. You know, that's a teaching challenge. So that's tougher. But again, you know, the graduate seminar is research-oriented. At freshman comp, where all those students in my class want to run to the business college as soon as they can, you know, I can't bring my research into that class. I can try. I shouldn't, but many do. And many do anything they can to avoid freshmen and sophomores, right? Okay. So there is regular support for research. Let's understand that portion of the paycheck as research support. Now, the final step consumption. What happens to these books and articles when they get published? Well, one, they get the author tenure, right? There are certainly internal consequences for the writer. Okay? And that, of course, is the incentive for doing it. But scholarly communication is warranted by its impact on others. Right? That's what scholarly communication is for. Okay? Why do we do it? So that others may read it and learn from it. Now, how then do you calculate that learning by others? How do you calculate that impact? And this is the tricky part for this research report. We can't calculate how many times someone reads a book on Herman Melville and learns something from it and takes it into a classroom. You know, we don't have any mechanism for doing that. We do, however, have certain mechanisms for calculating more extensive use. For instance, unit sales. Okay. Sales of monographs by university presses. Well, in the 1980s, every book in literary studies published by Yale University Press sold about 1,100 copies. It was an editor at Yale told me this. Okay. Now, Yale can only count upon sales in the high 200s. Okay. And almost all of those sales are standing library orders, which means the academic library buys everything Yale publishes every year. They just do it. When you look at motivated individual buyers, you're in the mid-2 figures for units. You know, maybe 100. You take away friends and family. You take away departments that purchase the book because the person's up for promotion, purchases 10 copies to send out to readers, and has for the department review. Okay, you're under 100. Lindsay Waters, the literary editor at Harvard Press, said that the average unit sales for every literary book, every humanities book from Harvard, every literary book from Harvard is about 350 units. Okay? So it's gone way down, just the number of books sold. If you ask, and I did this anecdotally, if you ask librarians, circulation librarians, and I recommend you do this at your campuses, what are the odds that a book in literary studies, that a monograph in literary studies will not be checked out in a 10-year period? And they'll say, and again, this is anecdotal. This isn't in the report. This is anecdotal. They'll say that the odds are good. The odds are good, which is why they have reduced their purchases. Okay. Now, finally, I did what the sciences routinely do, right? You count citations. And in the sciences, citation counts are standard practice, right, for understanding impact. The problem is the sciences are not book-based, right? The humanities still heavy on books. And we don't have search engines that are comprehensive enough to pick up books. However, well, one search engine does pick up some books, but one search engine does pick up pretty much all the journals now in literary studies. Okay, it picks up JSTOR, it picks up about 400 journals. Okay. And it's Google Scholar, right? Google Scholar, which is getting better all the time. And so in Google Scholar, you can look up articles and see its citation counts in most of the journals, almost all the journals in literary studies, and many, many books and dissertations, too. So that's what I did. I went through articles published, you know, in 2002, 2003, 2004, and I simply did citation counts of all these articles, all of them, published in that period by every faculty member, in every current faculty member in that department who was there back then. I'm just going to read to you some of the numbers that came up. 23 research articles published by University of Georgia professors in 2004. They were 23 of them. 16 of them received 0 to 2 citations in the next 6 years. 0 to 2. 16 of them. 4 of them got 3 to 6 citations. 1 got 8 citations, 1 11, and 1 16. Okay? So, we have a judgment call to make. What is the level of significance? What do we term success for those articles? That's obviously, this is the fuzzy part. This is the tricky part. Was it worth it of those 16 out of 23 that got 0 to 2 citations? I think generally no. Remember, all the work that went into those articles, okay, a lot of time and a lot of money from the university paying that person for that labor, we end up with 0 to 2 for 2/3 of those articles that were published. Okay? And also remember, most citations in literary studies are perfunctory. Footnote, for more on such and such, see blah, 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 blah. There is no real engagement. It's simply an arrow. Okay? So I regard this as a highly generous approach toward citation, picking up any citation whatsoever. An article that got 16 citations? Yes, certainly. An article that got 10 citations? Maybe so. You look at those citations and determine the quality of them. Okay, another one. Of 17 research articles by University of Illinois English professors in 2004, 11 got 0 to 2, 4 got 3 to 6, 1 got 20, 1 got 27. Okay, certainly the last two, success, right? Those others, you know, you have to say, I'm not sure this was worth it, okay? Now again, it's a disturbing statement, right? These people, and one thing very important, many of these articles that got very little notice are intelligent, well-researched, well-written, and on central issues in literary studies. You can't correlate quality with attention. In fact, there are some highly dicey articles and books that got more attention. So this is not an attack on the quality of work at all. And I'll give you I looked up one article just again a while back, a hefty article on a canonical English poet, William Blake, one of the most important poets in the English language, and the issue was the sublime, one of the central issues in aesthetics, especially in the Romantic period. Now the article is learned, it is wide-ranging, it is deeply researched, it has 40 footnotes, it is fully engaged with the field, and it was published in, I think it was published in Studies in Romanticism. It was published in one of the central journals, long-standing journals in the field. Okay? It's a worthy illustration of academic study, and it deserves notice and integration in subsequent research. That was 10 years ago. I Googled it, Google scholared it in a couple of months back. Only 9 citations in 10 years did it receive, and 6 of those citations were just the perfunctory, here, you know, see this, maybe listed with 5 other articles. Only 3 citations were stating something substantive, and those 3 were just 2 sentences each in subsequent books. Now, the person who wrote this article is intelligent, deeply trained. I mean, in this 40-year-old's mind is a huge reservoir of learning that went into this. And here we've got so little impact. Yes? That's right. That's exactly right. Okay? And we'll get to that. We'll get to that. And think of that as a practical issue. We're not talking in terms of principle here. We're not talking theoretically or abstractly. Think of it as a practical issue. Think of this as cost-benefit, okay? And nothing's free, right? The research is expensive, okay? It costs a lot of money to support this activity. And think in terms of opportunity costs. The more faculty members are engaging in research, the more they are not doing something else. Okay? And here's where the faculty would really get nervous, right? Are you going to shift our labor from research towards something else? Are you going to make us teach another class? Are you going to add another course each semester? We'll hold off on that. Yes, yes.
You might want to get there later, but there's a value to that research in that it informs my teaching. I couldn't imagine not doing research. I wouldn't know what I'd be talking about in class.
Very good point. Here's the thing. Here's the thing. In terms of informing your teaching, okay, did you have to direct your research toward publication?
I would have gotten critical feedback from the peer review process, and that peer review process truly sharpens the analysis.
Well, hold that thought because, no, right, because these are going to come up, and remember, in any policy revision, okay, a policy is only as good as it stands up to objections, right? It has to meet objections, and the thing is, this is what people will say, well, this informs my teaching. Now, here's the thing. When I look at literary studies, literary essays in studies in Romanticism, in critical inquiry, and elsewhere, it has become necessarily so advanced, right? Often highly theoretical. When I look at it, I cannot make a connection between an article in New Literary History last month and the sophomore classroom. I mean, the distance from this article to the American 19-year-old coming into that class, it is vast. Yeah. Well, let me ask you this. Some of the most important essays in literary studies were those 1960s essays by Jacques Derrida, right? Différence, okay, that essay. Okay? I would say that there is no way to bring the deeply complicated ontology of that essay in any practical way into a freshman or sophomore classroom. You bring Heidegger's ontological difference to, well, let me tell you what Jacques Derrida would say, and what he did say about this. He said, when in one essay, one interview that he did, he said it makes no sense to work with this kind of material until students have already read the classics. And what he meant by that was, Gadamer said the same thing. He said, you need to work through Aristotle deeply. You need to work through Kant and Hegel deeply. You need to go through Husserl and Heidegger. In fact, when Foucault gave his, one of his essays on discourse of language, Foucault said, it makes no sense to come to my work before having passed through Hegel. He said, Hegel is waiting for us all. And so I think that, yeah, he said, we came through him, and he's waiting for us at the end. Anyway, and I mean, they passed through. Here's what Paul Demond said, okay, another influential theorist. He wrote a letter to the Irvine Complet Department a report. Irvine Complet in 1977 asked DeMond to review their program and advise them on curricular revision. And what DeMond said to them was, Complet developed over the 20th century through philology. Multiple language, you had people like René Velek and Leo Spitzer, who grew up in households, German, Italian, French, mostly Romance languages and German. And their work was always based upon multiple languages, multiple literatures. And DeMond said, but that project has reached its conclusion. And we need to model the Complet curriculum now around a new concept, theory. And so what we do is we build a set of courses on theoretical problems. Problems in historiography, right? Problems in representation. And DeMond said, but one thing. No students can enter into these courses until they have done massive reading of literature in all those languages and the classics. I mean, he laid out, and this is what he said.
He also said scholarship is imminently teachable.
Well, I'm telling you a curricular statement by DeMond, which presumed 19-year-olds can't take courses in problems in historiography. That's a graduate seminar issue, okay? What they need to do is read a lot of literary history before they are prepared to do this. Well, I think that there is, that identifies an assumption about progress in the humanities, in literary studies, that one can raise practical questions about. You stated a principle. The principle is, we need to renew these works. These works are not just inert. The corpus is inert, right? But how we understand it and what values we bring to it, the circumstances certainly that changes. Now, the thing is, we set up a policy that fosters those changes. We're asking people to come up with new interpretations. We're forcing them to reread and reread. Remember, if you got 2007 items of scholarship on Emily Dickinson, the 2008 has to say something different, right? It's got to be original scholarship. And at what point does the system push that rereading, that reinterpretation past a more, I don't know, that the system itself is creating those things beyond people's motivation otherwise to find something in those things. And I'm saying that as a practical issue, and remember, you got to calculate it as cost, okay? This isn't free. Continuing the production of these articles is highly expensive, not only in terms of money, but in terms of faculty talent. Okay? Do you really want to have your professor spend 5 years writing a book on Charles Dickens and labor issues? And that's a huge investment of life and emotion to go along with employment and expertise. That book gets published. 10 years later, it got 8 citations. It's sitting there on the shelf. No one has checked it out. It sold a few hundred copies. And the institution made it happen. Okay? In fact, you're not even giving people time. Let me clarify. This is not about not doing research. This is about the pace of research. This is about saying, take 10 years to write a book the way it used to be. Okay? You don't have to churn out a book every 3 years. You don't have to churn out a book and 6 articles for publication. my advice, I mean, I advised the Emory English department in a meeting the other day, let's not ask for a book for tenure. This is absurd. People are writing bad books, and they're getting published. So what I advised was, and what I advised other departments is, tell departments, we will only look at 100 pages of scholarship at tenure time. Your portfolio, your scholarly portfolio can contain 100 pages. You pick your best 100 pages. So we're not going to judge you on quantity. We're going to look at those 100 pages. Now, what will assistant professors do? How many pages will they write in those 6 years? They'll write 100 pages, and they'll make them really good. They'll do 3 research articles, and they'll have time to craft the argument, to do a little more research, not to rush them into print before they're ready. I read a lot of manuscripts for university presses, and more than half of them I say, I can't judge this on scholarly grounds. It needs developmental editing. Okay? The project could be good, but it needs to be reconceived here from the start. It needs to be rearranged, and it needs to be, written. It needs line editing as well. And it's not the intelligence or the talent of the author. It didn't take long enough. You pushed too quickly to get it into print because of this accelerated pace of research. Yes?